always a good friend.
And let's listen to PAVORATI. Put on PAVORATI.
Hello. Welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, PAVORATI, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, excuse me. I'm here to discuss that Delphi case. And as a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions, and I'm not here to slander. I will provide information, give you my opinion on that information that I provide. All opinions are mine alone. So, here's what I've done. I've spent just a few days this week, maybe a few last week, delving into the Delphi case, looking at some of the information that other creators out there had already uncovered, specifically a guy Drip Drop and True Crime Design, because they're both awesome. And I also have spent many hours listening to the reports from Andrea Burkhart about the trial itself, what's been brought forth, and even spent a little time listening to Gray Hughes and his analysis. Now, I wish I had never done that, because now I know for a fact that Gray Hughes is as sharp as a bowling ball, literally. And I wish I had never listened to Gray Hughes, because now, after listening to that, I popped over to some old videos of his, looking at the Linda Lane footage, and I noticed how ridiculous his interpretation was of the facts on Linda Lane. Then it made me think about some of the ridiculous interpretations that Get a Clue had on Linda Lane, and I'm afraid I'm now going to have to sit and watch hours of Linda Lane footage, because either they both I think Get a Clue purposely misled, but I think Gray Hughes it was just not good. It's not good. I mean, I listened to a man yesterday say that Richard Allen was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for no reasons at all, and it was called as people was commenting stupid. I was like, good God, man, what are you doing? You're just not bright. And he made some really dumb. Oh my goodness. So anyway, after doing all that, looking at the actual transcripts from the trial, or as close to transcripts as you can get at this point, I'm going to give you the PAVORATI theory on the Delphi case, and I'm willing to bet at this point you'll probably agree with me. So this is the only video I'm going to dedicate to the Delphi case, because I think I've seen enough at this point to tell you what happened. And let's do it. Let's get into it. Okay, so first let's talk about Richard Allen and what they have on him, and let's go ahead and conclude this on out. Number one, the confessions. Well, none of the confessions, now that I've watched this, were made prior to him being incarcerated. And in fact, he strictly denied having any involvement in it whatsoever, and they arrested him. Didn't just put him in the jail, they put him in the state penitentiary. And folks, there is no telling what they did to this guy in the state penitentiary. And yeah, he started making confessions. Those have to be excluded, because he didn't make any confessions before he was stuck in that prison, and that is just absolutely ridiculous. So the confessions need to be they just need to be suppressed whatsoever. DNA linking him. Well, we learned yesterday they have nothing that links him to the crime scene. In fact, when you start going through that DNA, you'll notice that the only male DNA that they could even find to try to link him was a male that worked in the lab there at the Indiana State Police lab, and every time they came across a female DNA, they didn't test it. They would, oh, this is female. Okay, this isn't who we're looking for. So the fact that they didn't explore any of the female DNA shows, just how dense people are when they look at something like this. The witnesses they brought in, they all testified to seeing a bridge guy, and not one of those witnesses were asked to identify Richard Allen as the bridge guy. So my guess is one of those witnesses not only didn't identify Richard Allen, they're probably one of the likely killer/killers. The bullet match. Junk science. You can't match bullets with unspent shells in them just to being ejected from a gun and think that's going to be an accurate match. Not only that, they had to match it to a bullet that had a spent shell. Actually, they had to put the shell in the bullet in the gun, shoot it, then expend the shell, and then match it to the one that hasn't been shot. So that is ridiculous. Junk science. And by the way, when you go into somebody's house with a random bullet and he owns 25 guns like Richard Allen does, and Richard Allen, by the way, is a veteran, nobody seems to have problems, denigrating Richard Allen and his veteran status. But boy, if you mention one thing about Brent Kopacka, you will get absolutely annihilated for denigrating a veteran. But when you go into a veteran's house and he owns 25 guns, you're bound to be able to match a random bullet that would actually fit in one of his 25 guns. Give me a break. Sketches of the suspect, well, they're not going to allow that into evidence because neither one of the sketches resemble Richard Allen. And both men in the sketches have hair. Richard Allen's bald. I mean, this is ridiculous. But then at the crime scene, we also know that Richard Allen has no connection that anybody's found to Odinism. However, Odinist symbols are found at the crime scene, and an elaborate Odinist ritual has been performed. And when you look at the way that the bodies are staged, those are staged. That means this actual ritual happened somewhere else. They put those bodies there and they stage them in that exact manner because that is the way the ritual is designed to end. So when you look at the evidence that is not against Richard Allen, but you look at some of the finer points, then it starts to paint a picture. This case is not hard to solve at all. All right, so here is as close as you can get to transcripts from the testimony about the DNA, and I'm just going to read some of the highlighted portions. And you can see she describes to the jury, this is their DNA expert that tested all the evidence, but she describes to the jury steps involved in testing the DNA and describes single source DNA and mixture DNA. And the reason I really wanted to go through this is because when you start looking at all these steps on this DNA, and you'll see there, like number one, it describes single source DNA and mixture DNA. If you watch my DNA series, then I showed you how they take mixture DNA and separate it into a single profile. And that is an easy way for them to take mixture DNA and create a profile with it as well using familial markers. But that's a side note. She describes a report she made in 2017, their testing of the two Indiana SA evidence kits. Now, Bazanovsky tells the jury the details of how the kits were performed on both Libby and Abby. She tells the jury there was no seminal fluid detected and that the kits mostly excluded male DNA, with the exception of one set of the swabs and fingernail scrapings kit from each girl, which suggested male, and she told the jury the kit suggested the presence of male DNA, but was insufficient for further analysis. So it was incomplete samples, just like they would have found in the Koberger case. In this case, they just quit. But when it talks about there was no seminal fluid detected, and most of the kits excluded male DNA, that doesn't mean it didn't include female DNA. Everything that they do in this shows that there was female DNA, but they did not pursue it because they're looking at it from the point of view of these are two little girls killed, it's got to be a man. So let's go find the male stuff. And they didn't look at none of the female stuff, and that's exactly where they should have looked, and I'll explain why in a minute. But you can see no male DNA, she told the jury, and she concluded that there was no male DNA. There was insufficient male DNA for further analysis. Bazanovsky tells the jury at the time they were not performing confirmation tests and that it was a choice to preserve DNA material. Further results of DNA testing on cervical swabs on the girls show no male DNA evidence. Anything that was female, they did not pursue it. And then the only male DNA evidence they could find was from one of their own men that worked in their forensic lab. So see how easy it is to contaminate a sample in a case like this, in a case like Koberger's case? So what does all of this tell us? Let me show you. It is my humble opinion that Miss Betsy Blair is what's known as a vulva. She is more than likely, in my humble opinion, one of the vulvas in the local Odinistic clan, and let me explain why I say that. Took this little animation from Gray Hughes, and the problem with him is not his ability to create animations and make them work. It's the interpretation of the evidence is where he is as dense as most anybody. But what you're going to see here, let me back this up just a hair, because you're going to see what happened in this case. Okay. So Betsy Blair is the little yellow dot. She parks her red car, gets out on the trail, starts walking towards the bridge. Abby and Libby is then dropped off. They get out and they're walking on the trail towards the bridge. And then Betsy Blair gets to the bridge, turns around, comes up. Uh-oh, there's Abby and Libby. Now, instead of what the genius here says happens after that, what really happens is Betsy Blair sees Abby and Libby, and she gets Abby and Libby and takes them back to her car, and they leave. So, why is this an insult, and what does it tell us about Odin and his relations with women? Okay, this is when you dive into Odinism and you learn some things about it. As we shall see, as a god of magic, Odin is essentially liminal. Far from being a male chauvinist, he is, of all male deities, the one who most consistently seeks wisdom from females. Although Odin is a powerful god for men today, he has also become important for a surprising number of women to whom he comes in gentler guise. But in promoting this sorcery, unmanliness, urgy, followed by so much that men seem not without shame in dealing with it, the priestesses were therefore taught this craft. You see, whenever people are looking at ritualistic behavior, for some reason, they tend to lean towards the male being the contributing factor, and they forget throughout history, it's almost always the women that are the witches, and the women are the ones that perform the ceremonies. The women are the ones who understand the processes of a sacrifice and what to do in the ritual to try to gain whatever is being desired to be gained. But in today's world, we have some type of block in our brains when we see this, and we think it's got to be men. Folks, it is the women. This is a ceremony, a ritual of this nature is always going to involve what we think of as a witch, which is a woman. And it's not new. You'll see Volva, the Viking witch, or seeress. A vulva, or as it is pronounced in Old Norse, Volve, is what we in English would call a seeress. You could compare it to someone who practiced shamanism or witchcraft. So a vulva is a Nordic version of a shaman or witch that practiced magic. The vulva in the Viking Age were the predecessors of the medieval witches. So you could say they were witches before it became cool. A vulva is not something that just dates back to the Viking Age. A vulva is in fact very ancient, and their roots go back more than 2,000 to 3,000 years. It's the same old stuff with a different name on it. You go to witches and sacrifices, you can go to any pagan type religion, whether it be Odinism, Satanism, it doesn't matter, but you're always going to find the same type of scenario. And folks, it's always going to involve a woman that thinks she is a witch. Okay, so as much as I've deep dived, into the Odin angle in the Idaho 4 case, I've actually studied deeply into Odinism. The main use of Odinism as it relates to white supremacist prison gangs is they use Odinistic runes to communicate. It's like a secret language for them that only they know. And, they can write a simple symbol down, pass it along in a note, and somebody else fluent in their language they know exactly what they're saying. The guards, law enforcement, nobody else knows. That is how they use the Odinistic angle in prison. But once you get outside of prison, the Odin gangs, they still persist, and you got to look at things a little bit different than people want to look at things in today's age. You see, we're in the age of the effeminate man, where people, they look at men like they're effeminate. All right, so this is a ritual. These were two little girls. It had to be the men. The men were doing some kind of ritual. Folks, that isn't how it works. Ever. Hardly in any religions. I mean, you've heard of witches your whole life. Occasionally you've heard of a warlock, which is a male form of a witch, but it's almost always women. Witches are women. In all of these weird sects, the witches are typically the women. And it's the women who want to do these witchy things, brew up potions, do spells, and they try to be seers, okay? And what a seer is somebody that can see the future, right? They're wanting guidance. These Odinistic guys, they want guidance, so they go to their witch for guidance. What should I do in this situation? What should we do about this? And the witches do some kind of ritual and try to guide the men in what they're supposed to do. So when you got a scenario like this that is very much an Odinistic ritual. I mean, they left the symbols. I mean, everything about this is a ritual. The reason you have to ask yourself, what is the reason for the ritual? It can't just be, well, this is what the Odins do. No, it's an Odinistic witch, a vulva, doing a ritual so that she can see the future and guide the other Odinists on things that they're planning on doing. You have to think about what is the reason for it. Now, am I saying this all is, reality based? No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that does work. I don't know. I'd hate to think about it, but I'm sure they do it because they think it works. But when you look at it from the proper perspective, they didn't even search for female DNA. Every time apparently they found it many, many times. Oh, another female, throw it out. We're looking for a male because these are two little girls. Another female, throw it out. We're looking for a male. These are two little girls. Yeah, there was probably more than one witch involved in this little scenario. So when you look at the facts and you look who had the opportunity, looks to me like Betsy Blair got on that path, ran across little Abby and Libby, and probably didn't have to use force to take them, if you know what I mean. she probably sweet talked to two little girls, got them into her car, took them somewhere. They did their ritual, brought them back out there, put them in the woods, and then posed them according to their ritualistic practice, how they think they're supposed to be posed after the ritual is over. And then they left. And that's what happened in Delphi. They just had to open their eyes. Yeah, it's the Odinist angle, but who in the Odinists actually do the ceremonies? Who are the people who actually would want to do a ritual? It's the women. It's the witches. It's the vulvas. Last video I do on Delphi. There you have it. Please like and subscribe to this channel, though. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. I'm currently in the process of staring at Linda Lane footage, so I hope to have a Idaho video out for you a little later today. Probably not on what I'm staring at as far as the Linda Lane footage, but I'm going to just have kind of a discussion about some of the things that I brought forward here recently. Till then, Pavarotti's out.